So, let's start at the very beginning. Way before we had glass slabs in our pockets, mobile phones were a completely different beast. We're talking about the 1970s and 1980s. The first handheld mobile phone call was actually made in 1973. The device used was a prototype that looked more like a prop from a sci-fi movie than something you'd carry every day. These early phones were massive, heavy, and incredibly expensive. They were nicknamed brick phones for a good reason. They were literally the size and weight of a brick. They were mostly seen as a luxury item or a tool for business people who absolutely needed to be connected on the go. Using one of these early mobile phones was a simple, but also a very limited experience. The main function, and really the only function, was to make and receive phone calls. There was no texting, no internet, and definitely no apps. The user interface was just a numeric keypad for dialing numbers and a few buttons like send and end. The screens were tiny, often just a single line of red LED numbers showing the number you were dialing. Battery life was also a huge issue. You might get around 30 minutes of talk time, and then you'd have to charge the phone for about 10 hours. It was a serious commitment. These devices were symbols of status. If you saw someone walking down the street in the 1980s talking on a mobile phone, they were probably a big deal. The technology was revolutionary for its time, freeing communication from the constraints of a landline cord, but it was far from being a mainstream product. The cost was prohibitive for most people, often running into thousands of dollars, not to mention the expensive service plans. It was a glimpse into the future of communication, but it was a future that still felt very far away for the average person. These phones were not designed for your pocket, they were designed for your briefcase. The design of these brick phones was all about function over form. They were built to house large batteries and complex, power-hungry analog radio components. The long, often retractable antenna was essential for getting a signal, which was spotty at best back then. The plastic casings were thick and durable, but that also added to the weight. Holding one up to your ear for an extended call would have been a real workout for your arm. It's wild to think that this is where the journey of mobile technology started, with a device that could only do one thing, and did it with a lot of effort and expense. Then came the 1990s and things really started to change. This was the decade when mobile phones began to shrink and become more accessible to everyone. The era of the feature phone was born, and one company, Nokia, became the king. Phones like the legendary Nokia 3310 became iconic. These devices were much smaller, fitting comfortably in your hand and your pocket. They were also much more affordable, which helped bring mobile technology to the masses. Suddenly, it wasn't just business executives who had phones. Students, parents, and just about everyone else started carrying them. The features on these phones were a huge step up from the brick phone era. The biggest new feature was SMS, or text messaging. This completely changed how people communicated. Instead of having to make a call for everything, you could send a quick, quiet message. These phones also introduced basic games, with Snake on Nokia phones becoming a cultural phenomenon. You also got things like a calculator, an alarm clock, and the ability to change your ringtone. It was the first time a phone was more than just a phone. It was a small, personal device with a bit of entertainment built in. The design of these feature phones was focused on usability and durability. They had physical keypads, which were great for typing out text messages without looking. The tactile feedback of pressing a real button was something everyone got used to, and these phones were tough. The Nokia 3310 in particular gained a reputation for being nearly indestructible. You could drop it, and it would probably be fine. The batteries also lasted for days on a single charge, something that modern smartphone users can only dream of. The small monochrome screens were simple, but they were power efficient and easy to read. This period was really about making mobile phones personal. You could customize your phone by swapping out the plastic faceplates for different colors and designs. You could compose your own monophonic ringtones. It was about making the device yours. While they couldn't browse the internet in any meaningful way and had no cameras yet, these feature phones laid the groundwork for the personal relationship we have with our devices today. They proved that people wanted a device in their pocket that did more than just make calls, setting the stage for the massive changes that were just around the corner. As we moved into the 2000s, the idea of a smartphone started to take shape. These weren't just feature phones anymore. They were devices that aimed to put the power of a computer in your hand. Companies like BlackBerry, which was then called RIM, became dominant. The key feature of a BlackBerry was its physical QWERTY keyboard. This was a game changer for professionals. It made typing long emails incredibly fast and efficient. BlackBerry devices also had push email, meaning you got your emails instantly just like a text message. This was so addictive that people started calling them crackberries. These early smartphones were all about productivity. They had calendars that could sync with your computer, advanced contact books, and basic web browsers. For the first time, you could genuinely get work done on the go. Nokia also made big moves in this space with its communicator series. These were devices that looked like a normal phone on the outside, but you could open them up like a clamshell to reveal a large screen and a full keyboard. They were like tiny laptops. While these devices were powerful, they were still pretty complex and mostly aimed at business users. During this time, we also saw the first real experiments with touchscreens on phones. Companies like Sony Ericsson and HTC released devices that used a stylus on a resistive touchscreen. A resistive screen works by sensing pressure, so you had to press down on the screen with a stylus or your fingernail to get it to register. It was a bit clunky compared to what we have today, but it was a step towards a buttonless future. However, many people still preferred the tactile feedback and accuracy of a physical keyboard. Typing on these early touchscreens was slow and often frustrating, so the market was kind of split. On one side, you had the keyboard-centric devices like BlackBerry, which were amazing for email and typing. On the other side, you had these experimental touchscreen phones that were interesting, but not quite ready for prime time. The software on these devices was also quite complicated. Operating systems like Symbian, Windows Mobile, and BlackBerry OS were powerful, but they weren't always intuitive for the average consumer. The stage was set for a company to come in and figure out how to make a powerful smartphone that was also simple and fun to use for everyone. And then, in 2007, everything changed. Steve Jobs walked on stage and introduced the first iPhone. It was a moment that completely redefined the mobile industry. The iPhone got rid of the physical keyboard and the stylus, which were standard on most smartphones at the time. Instead, it had a large capacitive touchscreen. This type of screen responded to the light touch of a finger, not pressure. It made navigating the phone feel fluid and natural. The iPhone combined three things: a widescreen iPod, a revolutionary mobile phone, and a breakthrough internet communicator. It was a bold vision. The iPhone software, iOS, was the real star of the show. It was incredibly simple and intuitive. Instead of complex menus, you had a grid of icons. Everything was controlled with simple gestures like tapping, swiping, and pinching to zoom. This was a huge deal because it made the smartphone accessible to everyone, not just tech-savvy users or business professionals. The mobile web browser, Safari, was also a revelation. It displayed full websites, just like on a desktop computer, which was something other mobile browsers struggled with. It truly felt like you had the internet in your pocket for the first time. But the biggest change came a year later in 2008, with the launch of the App Store. Before the App Store, getting new software on your phone was a complicated process. The App Store created a centralized, safe, and easy-to-use marketplace where developers could create and sell their applications directly to users. This sparked a software explosion. Suddenly, your phone could do anything you could imagine. There were apps for games, social media, productivity, navigation, and so much more. The phone was no longer just a device with fixed functions. It was a platform that could constantly evolve. The success of the iPhone and the App Store created a ripple effect across the entire industry. Other manufacturers realized that the future was a large touchscreen and a thriving app ecosystem. The focus shifted from hardware specifications to the overall user experience. The iPhone set a new standard for what a smartphone should be, and every other company had to scramble to catch up. It wasn't just a new product, it was the beginning of a new era in personal computing, one that would shape the next decade and beyond. Right after the iPhone launched, Google was ready with its own response, Android. Android was an open-source mobile operating system, which meant that any manufacturer could use it and modify it for their devices. This was a brilliant move. It allowed companies like Samsung, HTC, LG, and many others to quickly build their own smartphones to compete with the iPhone. This led to an explosion of choice in the market. You could get Android phones in all shapes, sizes, and price points. This competition drove innovation and made smartphones more affordable and accessible to millions more people around the world. The 2010s became a race of specifications and features. Each year, smartphones got better and better. Screens became larger, with higher resolutions and more vibrant colors. Cameras evolved from being a novelty to becoming high-quality tools that could shoot stunning photos and 4K video, effectively replacing the need for a separate point-and-shoot camera for most people. Processors became faster, enabling console-quality gaming and seamless multitasking. And with the rollout of 4G and now 5G networks, internet speeds on our phones became incredibly fast, making streaming video and cloud services a part of everyday life. In recent years, the next big shift has been the integration of artificial intelligence, or AI. AI is now deeply embedded in our smartphones. It powers the smart assistants like Google Assistant and Siri, allowing us to control our phones with our voice. AI also works behind the scenes to improve our photos, manage our battery life, and provide personalized recommendations. We're seeing real-time AI features like live language translation in a conversation, or identifying objects just by pointing your camera at them. AI is making our phones smarter, more personal, and more helpful. Looking back, it's incredible to see how far we've come from those early brick phones. Smartphones have fundamentally changed society. They've replaced dozens of other devices: our camera, music player, GPS, and even our wallet. They've changed how we work, socialize, and entertain ourselves. The future will likely see even deeper integration of AI, new form factors like foldable phones becoming more common, and maybe even a shift towards augmented reality experiences powered by our phones. One thing is for sure: the slab of glass and metal in our pocket will continue to be one of the most important pieces of technology in our lives. It's been a wild ride, and it's far from over.